Jab Mainupan 78 Salk Dadako Dekakwas Ho Kopki Truck Ki Kabila Kar Use AC Da Creek Mine Lagay, Tab Muj Lagaya Thakia Jang Abkat Am Hon Wali Hai, Magar Jo Baat Mujas Wakt Samaj Naya Aithi, Wa Yethi Castle Tavish Ruat Hoithi. Sabkut Shuru Huajab Chad Morrison Ajo Apnap Koho Ka Security Director Kata Thani Hamari Family Keys Amin Ko Apni Personal Parking Bonalia Pur 6 Mehanus Kamad Black Ram 2500 Hamar Ranch Darways Ksam Kata Rata 6 Mahatak Hum Phone Cart Rehi Arzian Likt Rehi Guzirish Kar Trehi Urwa Surf Hamar Chayran Parhans Kar Chalajita Magar Jab Uznri Girlfriend Kohath Lagaya Dawathawa Paljo Sabur Band Tadgaya, Mainetko Yekohani Batata Hun Kun Kabi Bek 78 Sal Kisan Se Pangana Elena Shahai, Jo 40 Sal Se Heavy Machinery Chala Raha Ho, Zer or Comment Karkbada in Kap Kahan Se Dekrahi Hain A Urchlaish Urukard Hain is Kahaniko, Marinam Jake Thompson High, is Bear Shani Se Pale Zine Doggy Coffee CD Thee. Main Texas A.M. Say Agricultural Business Key Degree Lee, Apndada Hauki Madad Klai Wapas Hamer 200 Acre Cranch Pare Agaya, Joe Ostink Bahertha Thompson Condon Niaz Amin 1923 Say Sambul Raki Thea Depression, Du World War, Bishu Marsukadi Chuka Theilaka, Dada Hamshake the, Jab Tumhari Jaden Tumher Podasiki Ban Say J Rihodi Hain, Datum Kebi Peach Na Ihat T. Hamer Ranch Kazpas Pale Surf Farmlands Huikard the, Lekan Pitch 5 Salon Mine Nane Naho Whale Fancy Societies Ugay Agay, Jays Brishk Bad Kale Battle, Yahi Say Chad Morrison Namcom Usabat Zine Doggy Mine Paley Bar Jab Main Use Dikita Wap Neajib Sea Truck Say Utar Raha Thakale Tinted Sheesh, Bade Tires. Chemic Hue Accessories, Deacon Say Lag Raha Thakwa Kisi Cheese Ki Kami Mesus Kar Raha Hai, while Lag Bag 6 foot 2 Thak, Jiskad Jism is Ba'at Ka Ishara the Raha Thak Kebi Workout Karda Thak, Lekan Ab Surf Beer Ka Asar Zayada Thak, Ek Tuesday Suba January Ki Thijab Buzn Paley Bar Epni Truck Hamer Main Gate Ksam Logidi. Manus Wakt Mavshi Deacon Jaraha Thajab Marie Nazara Struck Parpadi Aek Body C Black Truck, Joe Hammer Entrance Ko Azro Kuthi J's Koi Modern Berlin Wall, Pay Logisha Iad Galti Se Kata Kardia Hoga, Ya GPS Niga Bod Kardi Ho, Main Ajbada, Usk Shish Par Halki Si Nak Ki, Jabuzn Shishal Nij Kia, Tab Paley Baruskachera Deka, Uskachera Astera Se Bigda Huatha. Jays Dunia Se Hamsha Ners Rataho, Mafkijai Sir, Aphamer Entrance Ko Block Kar Rehi Hain, Main Tamis Se Kaha, Chadni Mujays Dukla Jays Main Usk Jatan Knija A Ho Midi Hon, Tumhara Entrance, Hoki Property Survey Commutabakia Community Access Road High, Public Right of Way, Uzn-Kaha, Marichera Kozgaya, Yet Ahamari Zamin Thea Century Says Odyssey, Lagta High Koigalat Fami Hogai High, Yet Private Property High, Thompson Ranch, Hamerpas 1923 Salakar Ajtak Deed Papers Hain, Manja Wabdia, Chad Kihansias Thejays Nails Kisi Blackboard Gacy Trehi Ho, Sano Farm Boy, Uzn-Kaha, Zamana Badal Chuka High, Yepwa Ura Ilaka Abho Kunder High. Iger Mizl High, Tabord Se Ba'at Kra, Uski Body Language Tab Beda Gay A Pang Biprawatha, Abdkawa Karn Laga, Truck Sayatra, Epni Height Kafda Uthain Ki Kashish Ki, Tumd Khalif Naishatamir Gadi Kohath Log Anna Band Kurl, Uzn-Kaha Wa Phone Nikelkar Video Bananish Urukardi, Main Ismalakat Kar Ekard Bana Raha Hun Ho Board Klai, Property Owner Ka Harassment. Ho Security Vehicle Konukson Po Anchain Ki Kashish, Main Peach Hada, Hath Up Harkai, Bai Bazapan Jan Warren Tak Po Anchna Hai, Koi Bikrokajagran Aish, Main Kaha, Chadepni Truk Side Say Tekleaning Kark Bola, Son Jr., Main Jahan Shahunga Apni Duty Klai Park Kurunga, Tumhari Yefarm Hamer Community Kluk Karabkar Raha Hai, Ho Board Zoning Dikrai Hai. Beter hoga apni zamin bik karkasi di hat chail jail, di hat lafzes kaha jays gali ho, main wahin kada regaya ayak engine bandamuj karaha thak hamari 100 salperani zamin uski community kisan mind dehai, karaha fabik kar nikl jail, dekai I chada Mr. Morrison, tak dia, Mr. Morrison. Yamre family ki zamin hai, hum kahin na erahi, hum ek padasi ben saktain, shayad schedule bana late hain, main kaha, sir hilakar hansi mari, tum samaj na ho, yakoi ba ad cheat kan mamlanai, yamain tum batiraha hun kabya hun kai hoga, clipboard sayak paper nikalkar mirhaith mine thamadia, hoka notice, tum hara farm road hamer ho property sale agta high. Main jab shahun patrol car saktahun, main ni paper de kaalag bag bakwas legal shabdan ka bike rajumlathan, lekan koi official letterhead ya signature nai, yet all legitimate lag tanai, letterhead kahanhai, signature, chad kiang kain tang ho gai, tum ho ki authority psoel atharahi ho, beta, mujgursa ain laga, main tum hari authority psoel kar raha hun kamari zamin entrance ko block karn kahak kays high. Main kaha, wa karib agaya 8 ne karib kuski bossy coffee cigarette ki bad boo ra ithi, sun farm boy, yepwa ilaka abho kahai, tumhara yezamin katuk dahamer beach mine high, ham access road, utilities, zoning control card hain, abdict hain kidney dertik paid ho, yeka car wapni truck mine chadgaya, engine starred kia. Jane say palmri windshield parek note kod gaya, yab hoki property high, jokar sakta high karla, main way hin kada us note co-pact, gursa hirani mine dubrahuatha tabi peach say dada housekeeper in ford pickup hadi sunaidi, dada uter, umre shakeldik kar unka cherisakt ho gaya, main unsabataya, note dia, dada ni note dian say pada. Thikse fold car kipni shirt kijeb mine rak lia, Jake, unkalaja pali barajib the, kai atum pata hike main Vietnam mine combat engineer the, main nisar hiladia, 25 sal mine dada ni kabi epni jank hikohani naibatei the, ablag to high walked gaya hike tum kuch strategy seeknashai, us shem dada ni wokahini and sunei jo main pali bar sun raha the, Harold Thompson surfek kisan nai. Balki Vietnam battlefield ka ek Paranasapai. Grandpa had spent his years as a combat engineer, building bridges and clearing obstacles in Vietnam. When he got home, he used his GI benefits to buy heavy equipment and grow the ranch. The thing about bullies, Jake, he said while rocking in his chair, is they always underestimate the folks they pick on. They see what they want to see, just some old farmer and his grandson. What they don't see is the man who spent 3 years outsmarting the Viet Cong. I'd always known Grandpa was tough, but I was starting to realize just how deep his grit ran. The next morning, like clockwork, Chad showed up, same truck, same spot, same smug attitude, but this time, I was ready. I'd spent the evening digging into his past, and what I found was interesting, to say the least. Public records showed Chad Morrison had once been a police officer with the Austin PD. That ended about 2 years ago, not by his choice. He racked up multiple complaints for excessive force and misconduct. After leaving the force, he bounced between security jobs before somehow landing this HOA position. And the kicker, the woman who hired him, Margaret Morrison Blackwell, wasn't just the HOA board president, she was his mother-in-law. Chad's wife had divorced him right around the time he lost his badge, but Margaret kept him close as her personal enforcer. The whole setup reeked of nepotism and backroom favors, but the real turning point came when my girlfriend Emily arrived that afternoon. Emily Rodriguez was sharp, fearless, and in her final year at law. She worked part-time for a local firm that specialized in property disputes and land rights. When I told her everything that had happened, her dark eyes flashed with fury. Jake, this is completely illegal. You can't just block someone's land and claim HOA jurisdiction like that, she snapped. Emily spent hours cross-referencing property records, HOA bylaws, and city ordinances. What she uncovered was eye-opening. The Thompson Ranch had been there long before any HOA even existed. Our land rights were grandfathered in by county law. More importantly, The so-called road Chad was claiming as HOA property was actually a private easement deeded to us generations ago. Here's the thing, Emily said, spreading out maps and documents across our kitchen table. The HOA has zero authority over your property. You're not part of their community. You never agreed to their bylaws. And they can't block your land access, period. Grandpa leaned in, scanning the papers. So what you're saying is this Chad fella's trespassing on our land? Emily nodded. Not just trespassing, this could count as harassment, intimidation, maybe even criminal violations. It's serious. Grandpa's smile wasn't his usual warm one. It was something colder, sharper. Well then, he said, I reckon it's time we document this mess properly. The next morning, I was ready, camera in hand, waiting for Chad to roll up. But this time, he wasn't alone. Margaret Morrison Blackwell was riding shotgun. I'd seen her photo in the local paper, but in person she was even more imposing. Silver hair pulled back tight, flawless skin, and a wardrobe that screamed old money. Pearls at 10 a.m. on a dusty ranch road. When she stepped out of Chad's truck, she looked around like our land was something foul stuck to her shoe. You must be the Thompson boy, she said, skipping any polite introductions. Her voice dripped with a practiced, upper-class drawl that hinted she'd spent a lifetime trying to sound above the rest. I'm Jake Thompson, ma'am. This is my family's ranch. Margaret sniffed dismissively. Yes, well, that's what we need to address. Your little farm here is becoming quite the blemish on our community. Property values in Pine Creek Estates are suffering because of this eyesore. She gestured vaguely at the fields and barns like they personally offended her. I could feel my blood pressure climbing. Ma'am, with all due respect, our family's been here for over 100 years. Your community's barely 5. We were here first. Chad took a step forward, resting a hand on what looked suspiciously like a police-style radio. Listen here, Junior, he sneered. Mrs. Morrison Blackwell's trying to be reasonably broken bar. Margaret crossed her arms, her expression cool and condescending. The HOA board has been reviewing zoning regulations for this entire area, she said. There are discussions happening at the county level. Eminent domain, a broken bar, matters of public good. I'm sure you understand. I didn't. Not fully, but I could feel my anger rising. Are you threatening to take our land? I asked, my voice low and tight. Margaret raised a manicured hand like she was swatting away a fly. No one's threatening anything, dear. We're simply exploring all available options to preserve the character and value of our community. She offered a smile that never reached her eyes. Perhaps you'd consider selling. I'm sure we could arrange a fair price. And that was the moment something in me snapped, not with anger, but with disbelief. The whole thing was so absurd I started laughing. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe these two people were standing on our land, telling me we were a problem for their neighborhood because of a rooster. When I finally caught my breath, I shook my head. Ma'am, I said, I appreciate your concern, but this ranch isn't for sale. It's been in my family for 4 generations. This is our home. Margaret's polite facade hardened into ice. How unfortunate, she said. Well, I suppose we'll have to see what legal remedies are available. Chad smirked and made a note in his little pad. Daily security patrols will continue, he said, for the safety of Pine Creek Estates. Of course. They climbed back into Chad's truck and drove off, but not before Chad called out over his shoulder. And farm boy, that rooster of yours? HOA noise ordinance says no livestock sounds before 7 a.m. or after 8 p.m. I'll be keeping a close ear on that. As their truck disappeared down the road, it hit me. This wasn't just Chad being a jerk. This was an organized campaign to drive us out. I grabbed my phone to call Emily, but before I could dial, I heard another engine approaching. Grandpa's old Ford rumbled down the drive, followed closely by another truck I didn't recognize. When they stopped, Grandpa got out with a grin and gestured to the man beside him, a big, broad-shouldered guy in his 50s wearing a khaki sheriff's uniform. Jake, Grandpa called, come meet Sheriff Johnson. Bob's an old buddy from the service. We served together in the Mekong Delta. The sheriff shook my hand with a firm grip. Pleasure to meet you, son. Your grandpa's told me you're having a little trouble with the HOA crowd. I was still processing. Yes, sir. Boot to broken bar. I didn't know Grandpa had called you about this. Grandpa chuckled. Oh, I didn't call him about that. I called him about something a bit more interesting. Sheriff Johnson reached into his truck, pulled out a folder, and handed it to me. Your grandfather asked me to run a background check on Chad Morrison. Thought you might like to see it. I opened the folder and my stomach twisted. Chad's record was worse than I'd imagined. Multiple excessive force complaints, 2 suspensions, and 1 final incident involving misconduct toward a female victim. A note from his commanding officer stood out. Officer Morrison displays concerning patterns of obsessive behavior and an inability to respect civilian authority. Recommends psychological evaluation. I swallowed hard. Chad wasn't just a problem, he was potentially dangerous. Sheriff Johnson tapped a page near the back. Here's something else. Chad isn't officially employed by the HOA. He's on Margaret Morrison Blackwell's private payroll through her security company, which means, legally, he's got about the same authority as a mall cop. When he claims to be enforcing HOA rules, he's playing dress up. I looked up, stunned. Wait, so the HOA board didn't authorize all this? The sheriff shook his head. They approved a basic security patrol. What Chad's doing goes way past anything they signed off on. The next morning, things escalated. I woke up to loud voices and music coming from our front gate. When I looked outside, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Chad's truck was there, sure, but so were 3 others. They were throwing a full-on cookout, folding chairs, a portable grill, a cooler full of beer, and about 6 guys I didn't recognize. They'd set up right in front of our gate, blocking our driveway. I stormed outside, Grandpa at my side. But it was worse than it looked. They'd actually moved our gate posts to make room for their little party, and trash was scattered all over the drive. One heavy-set guy with sleeve tattoos was grilling burgers on our property. What the hell is this? I yelled over the blaring country music. Chad raised his beer and grinned from the lawn chair. Hey there, farm boy. Just a little community gathering. HOA business, you understand. His friends laughed. I clenched my fists. This is private property. You need to pack up and leave. Now. Chad stood up, slow and theatrical. Well, see, that's the thing. We're having a discussion about property boundaries. According to county records, this road's a public easement. Been that way since '65. I felt Grandpa's hand on my shoulder, a silent warning. This was bait. They wanted us to lose our temper. I took a breath. Chad, this is your last chance. Leave peacefully. He exchanged looks with his buddies, then chuckled. Or what, Junior? Call the cops? Newsflash, I know every cop in this town. He pulled out his phone, and my stomach sank. If he really had connections, this could go south fast. But then Grandpa stepped forward, calm as ever. Chad, is it? I'm Harold Thompson. This here's my property. You and your friends are trespassing. You've damaged my gate, and you've littered on my land. I'm giving you 10 minutes to clean up and leave. Chad laughed. Or what, old man? Gonna sick your grandson on me? Grandpa's smile was ice cold. Oh no, son, I'm handling this myself. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Bob, it's Harold. Yeah, that situation we talked about? It's escalated. Multiple trespassers, property damage, a broken bar, and wait, is that marijuana I smell? I looked around. One of Chad's buddies was puffing on something that definitely wasn't tobacco. Chad's face drained of color. Yeah, Bob, Grandpa continued, might wanna bring animal control too. Don't think one of these fellas is safe to drive. He hung up and gave Chad a level look. Sheriff Johnson sends his regards. He'll be here in 5 minutes, along with a deputy who handles public intoxication and property crimes. Chad's buddies scattered. They packed up the grill, folding chairs, and cooler in record time, leaving beer cans and fast food wrappers everywhere. But Chad wasn't done. He got in my face one last time. This isn't over, farm boy. The HOA board meets next week. Guess what's at the top of the agenda? Your little farm. Zoning violations. Environmental impact. We'll drown you in paperwork until you're begging us to buy you out. I clenched my fists so tight they shook. I wanted to hit him, but Grandpa stepped between us. Chad, he said evenly, I think you'd better leave. Sheriff don't like to be kept waiting. 10 minutes later, Sheriff Johnson pulled in. We showed him the damage, the trash, and told him everything. He took photos, filed the report, and promised extra patrols in the area. Before he left, he pulled me aside. Jake, he said quietly, This is going to get worse before it gets better. Chad's embarrassed now, and guys like him don't handle that well. Start documenting everything. 8 cameras, written records, witness statements, build a case. It's the only way to shut people like this down for good. I nodded, still thinking about what Chad had said about the upcoming HOA board meeting. Sheriff, I asked quietly, what can a HOA board actually do to us? Sheriff Johnson sighed. More than they should, not as much as they think. With the right friends at City Hall, they can file complaints, demand inspections, push for zoning changes. It's all technically legal, but when it's aimed at one family, it's harassment. As his truck disappeared down the road, I looked at the mess Chad and his buddies had left behind. Beer cans, cigarette butts, grease stains on the gravel. But when I glanced over, Grandpa was grinning. What are you smiling about? They trashed our place. Grandpa bent down and picked up an empty beer can. Because, son, they just made their first big mistake. Emily figured out what he meant not long after she arrived, carrying a camera and a stack of legal documents. Texas takes property damage, trespassing, and public intoxication on private land real serious, she explained as she started snapping photos. Every beer can, every cigarette butt, every stain is evidence. A broken bar is actually good news. She spent 2 hours photographing the damage, measuring distances, and cataloging every bit of trash. Between her documentation and Sheriff Johnson's report, we had grounds to press charges: criminal trespass, vandalism, littering, maybe even public intoxication. Grandpa nodded, clearly impressed. Smart girl, Jake. You picked a good one. But our optimism didn't last. The next day, Emily tried to file charges. She came back furious. The desk sergeant barely looked up. She told me, according to our records, no criminal activity was reported at that address, he said. Then he claimed Officer Morrison responded to a complaint about us. No arrests made because the complainants declined to press charges. Emily's jaw clenched. I told him Chad Morrison isn't a cop. He got fired from Austin PD 2 years ago. The sergeant checked his computer and just shrugged. It says Officer Chad Morrison responded. He told me, if we want to complain, we have to go through internal affairs. My stomach turned. How is this even possible? It's not legal, Emily snapped. It's fraud, false reports, impersonating an officer, a broken bar. But it means Chad's got connections deeper than we thought. Sheriff Johnson dropped by that evening. When we told him what happened, his face went hard. I was afraid of this, he muttered. Chad's got friends on the force, guys who think like him. He paused, choosing his words. What he did filing a false report, that's a felony, but proving it, nearly impossible. His word against yours, and half the department covering for him. I felt like the bottom had dropped out of my stomach. So what now? We just let him get away with it? The sheriff exchanged a look with Grandpa. A conversation passed between them without a word. Well, Johnson said, there's the official route, and then there's the way things get done. Grandpa rocked back in his chair. Sometimes, Jake, you can't fight the system from inside. Sometimes you have to play their game better than they do. The next few days passed quietly. No sign of Chad's truck. No more barbecues at the gate. For a moment, I let myself hope maybe the bogus police report had satisfied whatever petty point he was trying to make. But Emily wasn't convinced. This feels like the calm before the storm, she warned. Guys like Chad don't just back down. And she was right. It started small. A sense of being watched while I worked the fields. Trucks tailing me into town. Hang-up calls at odd hours. Then it got personal. Emily began getting texts. At first, harmless enough. Saw you at the coffee shop today. You looked nice. That's a pretty dress. Then they turned darker. You could do better than that farm boy. A smart girl like you shouldn't waste her time. And we both knew it wasn't over. When Emily showed me the messages, my blood went cold. The number was blocked, but we both knew exactly who was behind them. Emily, you have to report this. She gave a bitter laugh. And tell them what? That the same guy their department just covered for is stalking me? Jake, they won't help. For the next 2 weeks, the harassment didn't stop. Emily changed her number. Somehow, Chad got the new one. Your boyfriend doesn't deserve you. I could protect you better than he can. You're making a mistake staying with him. Finally, Against my advice, Emily drove to the HOA office to file a formal complaint. What happened next made my blood boil. She found Chad himself sitting behind the reception desk. When she demanded to see Margaret Morrison Blackwell, Chad smirked. "She's not in, but I'm happy to help. What can the HOA do for you today, Emily?" The way he said her name made familiar, possessive made her skin crawl. "I want you to stop," Emily said. "Stop sending me messages, stop following me, stop harassing me." Chad's smile didn't budge. "I think you are confused. I don't know what you're talking about." Emily showed him the messages. Chad held up a hand, cutting her off. "Emily, you've been under a lot of stress. Dating Jake Thompson can't be easy. All those financial problems, legal troubles, maybe you're imagining things." And that's when it hit her. He knew too much. Details about her family, her background, information he should never have had access to. "How do you know about my family?" she demanded. Chad leaned back, utterly at ease. "Emily, I'm in security. It's my job to know about potential risks to the community. Your boyfriend's family has been flagged as problematic. We're just doing our due diligence." Emily stood to leave, but his voice followed her. "You're smart. Gonna be a lawyer, right? You've got your whole future ahead of you. Don't let Jake Thompson drag you down. When his family loses that ranch and they will out, what's that going to leave you with?" She turned, eyes blazing. "Are you threatening me?" Chad spread his hands in mock innocence. "Not at all. I'm offering you an opportunity, a fresh start. I could help you with that." The implication was clear as day. Emily left without another word, but Chad called after her, his voice oily. "Think about it, Emily. You know where to find me when you're ready to be reasonable." When she told me what happened, I snapped, rage like I'd never felt before. I was halfway to my truck when Grandpa caught my arm. "JK, stop. Think." I spun around, anger pouring out. "Think? He's stalking Emily, threatening her. What am I supposed to do? I just let him." Grandpa's grip tightened. "And what happens when you beat the hell out of him? You go to jail, and he wins. Is that what you want?" I wanted to argue God. I wanted to, but deep down I knew he was right. "So what then? We just let him get away with it?" Grandpa's eyes had that dangerous glint again. "No, Jake, we don't let him get away with anything, but we do it smart, we do it right." He glanced down the road, toward the spot where Chad's truck had parked so many times. "You know, I never told you the full story about that bridge in Vietnam. About what we did to Charlie after his 27th attempt to blow it up." I shook my head, still trembling with fury. "We didn't just rebuild the bridge again, Jake, we built a trap." That night, Grandpa sat me down and told me about Operation Thunder Road, a mission you wouldn't find in any history book. "The Viet Cong kept blowing up our bridges," he explained, "so we started building decoys, fake bridges that looked real but were rigged to collapse the moment they tried to plant charges. Meanwhile, we built the real bridge upstream, camouflaged and guarded." I was starting to understand. "You want to give Chad a fake target?" Grandpa smiled. "I want to give him exactly what he thinks he wants while we prepare our real move." Over the next week, Grandpa's plan took shape, and it started with what looked like surrender. When Chad came back, parking his truck by our gate, we did nothing. We acted defeated, worn down, beaten. I played my part, walking with my shoulders slumped, avoiding eye contact. We made Chad believe he was winning. All the while, we were setting the trap. I walked around with slumped shoulders, looking like a man who'd given up. Emily stayed away from the ranch, and when she did come over, she parked at the back of the property and slipped in through the fields. Meanwhile, Grandpa was on the phone constantly. Old army buddies, local contractors, even the county planning office. Whenever I asked what he was up to, he'd just wink and mutter, "Reconnaissance. Jake, know your enemy, know his weaknesses, know the terrain." And Chad, thinking he'd broken us, he got cocky. He started leaving his truck parked overnight at our gate, from dusk till dawn. Then he began bringing friends, not for parties this time, but for surveillance. They'd sit in their trucks with binoculars, watching the house, taking notes. And the harassment toward Emily escalated. The text messages turned explicit, threatening. "I know where you live. I know your schedule. I know you're scared." She went to the police again, desperate for help, but she got the same answer: no proof, no case. Even Sheriff Johnson, who tried to be decent, was hamstrung. Jake, I can't make an arrest on anonymous texts and circumstantial evidence. Chad's being too careful, but not careful enough. What Chad didn't know was that Emily had enlisted a cybersecurity expert from her law firm. Together, they'd been quietly tracing the origins of the texts, tracking IP addresses, building a digital trail. One evening, Emily called me, excitement in her voice for the first time in weeks. "JK, we've got him." The messages were being routed through a VPN, but the metadata left fingerprints. They traced back to devices connected to the HOA office's Wi-Fi. Even better, geolocation data placed the sender in the exact spots where Chad had been confirmed to be. For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. "Can we use this to nail him?" Emily's smile faded. "That's the problem. The evidence is technically admissibly broken bar, but getting it requires a warrant. And getting a warrant requires probable cause. The cops won't go for it and they still don't think we have a case. It's a catch-22. That's when things turned dangerous." Frustrated by what he thought was our submission, Chad decided to escalate. He started sneaking onto our property when he thought no one was home. We found footprints around the house, signs that someone had been peering through our windows. Our mailbox was smashed. Emily's tires were slashed when she visited. But the worst came one Tuesday night in May. I was in town late, meeting with our feed supplier, when Chad made his move. Emily was home alone, studying for her bar exam at the kitchen table. Around 9 p.m., she heard a truck pull up and assumed it was me. But when she looked out the window, it wasn't my truck in the driveway. It was Chad's black Ram. Panic set in. This time, he didn't just sit there. He got out, walked right up to the front door, knocked, then started pounding. "Emily, I know you're in there. We need to talk." She called me first, then 911. I was 20 minutes away, and the sheriff's department was even farther. Meanwhile, Chad kept pounding on the door, shouting threats and demands. "You can't avoid me forever, Emily. I'm trying to help you here. Your boyfriend's family is going down, and you can either go down with them or come with me." Emily barricaded herself in the bedroom, Grandpa's old hunting rifle clutched tight in her hands. For 45 agonizing minutes, Chad circled the house, rattling doorknobs, peering through windows, shouting through the glass, "I can protect you, Emily. I can give you everything that loser Jake can't. Don't make me do this the hard way." By the time I roared down the driveway, he was gone, but he left his mark. Our flower garden, trampled flat, the windshield on Emily's car, shattered, and carved deep into the front door's paint with a knife or a key were the words, "Last chance." I found Emily still clutching that rifle, trembling like a leaf. When I reached for her, she flinched. "Jakey, a broken bar. He's crazy. Really crazy. He's not going to stop." And something inside me broke. The woman I loved was being terrorized, hunted, by a lunatic with a badge complex and a grudge against my family. And no one was stopping him. 2 hours later, the police finally showed up. Same desk sergeant as before and the one who'd brushed Emily off time and again. He took a report, snapped a few photos of the damage. And when Emily tried to explain about the stalking and threats, he cut her off. "Mama broken bar, did you actually see Mr. Morrison commit these acts?" Emily stared at him, stunned. "Are you serious? Who else would it be?" The sergeant shrugged. "Could have been anyone. Kids, someone with a grudge. Unless you have direct evidence linking Mr. Morrison to these incidents, a broken bar, there's not much we can do." I wanted to strangle this smug bastard right there. "What about the threats? The pattern? The harassment?" The sergeant's face stayed stone cold. "What threats?" "According to our records, Mr. Morrison's been nothing but professional in his dealings with your family. If anything, a broken bar, you folks have been the aggressors." And that's when it hit me how deep this went. Chad's connections weren't casual. This wasn't just some grudge. He wasn't alone. Chad wasn't just protected by a couple of cop buddies, he had the whole damn system rigged in his favor. After the police left that night, Emily broke down, completely. "Jake, I can't do this anymore. I'm scared to come here. I'm scared to go home. I'm scared to walk to my car alone." I held her while she cried, fury and helplessness boiling inside me. But when I looked up, I saw Grandpa standing in the doorway. He wasn't looking at us. He was staring out into the darkness where Chad's truck had been parked. His face was calm, but his eyes, God, Those eyes were cold as ice. "Emily, honey," Grandpa said quietly, "why don't you pack a bag and stay at your sister's for a couple days? Jake and I need to have a conversation." Emily wiped at her tears, shaking her head. "Mr. Thompson, I'm not letting him drive me away from Jake. This is my fight too." For the first time since this nightmare started, Grandpa smiled that warm, familiar, grandfather's smile. "Oh, sweetheart, you're not leaving for good. You're just gonna be safe while Jake and a broken bar handle some business." Then he walked over to the closet and pulled out a dusty old box I'd never seen before. When he opened it, it wasn't filled with keepsakes. It was maps, photographs, and what looked like military planning documents. He pulled out a manila folder and slid it across the table toward me. "Jake," he said, his voice low, "it's time you learned about Operation Sweet Creek." Inside that box was a lifetime of secrets. Maps of our property going back almost a century, legal papers, military intelligence reports. But the thing that caught my eye was a folder marked, "Property rights easement say confidential." Grandpa spread everything out on the kitchen table like a general planning a war. "Jakey, a broken bar, what do you know about Sweet Creek?" I blinked. "Just a little stream running through our back 40. I used to catch crawfish there as a kid, build dams. Not much else." Grandpa grinned. "That little stream's been there forever, and according to Texas water rights law, a broken bar, it makes us very special." He unfolded a surveyor's map from 1923. "When your great-grandfather bought this land, Sweet Creek was the natural boundary. The HOA subdivision was built years later. On the other side, their property line stops at the water's edge." I studied the map, trying to make sense of it. "So broken bar, we own the creek?" Grandpa's smile widened. "We own the creek bed, and 20 feet on either side. Water rights, mineral rights, access rights, everything." Then he pulled out another document. "Chad's been parking his truck on a spot that, according to Army Corps of Engineers classifications, is what they call a strategic relocation site." It clicked. "You mean a broken bar we can legally tow his truck?" Grandpa chuckled. "Better than that. According to Texas property law, any vehicle abandoned on private property for more than 72 hours becomes the legal responsibility of the landowner. We can impound it, store it, and charge him storage fees by the hour." Hope surged through me. "But he moves it every couple days." Grandpa's eyes twinkled. "Does he? Are you sure?" The next morning, Grandpa showed me what he meant. Chad's truck was in its usual spot, but something was off. He handed me a pair of binoculars. "Check the plate." I focused, and my stomach dropped. Same make, model, and color as Chad's Ram 2500, but it wasn't his. Different license plate, different rims, darker tint. "Grandpa, broken bar, that's not Chad's truck." He nodded, satisfied. "Belongs to Jimmy Patterson, one of Chad's drinking buddies." I lowered the binoculars, confused. "Why?" Grandpa's grin was downright predatory. "Because Chad thinks he's being clever. Rotating vehicles, different owners, same harassment." But Grandpa had been documenting everything. Photos, timestamps, license plates, every visitor, every incident. "Jake," he said, pulling out his phone, "I want you to meet someone." That afternoon, a woman in her 50s showed up in a sharp business suit. Margaret Sullivan, the kind of woman whose handshake tells you she's eaten tougher men than Chad Morrison for breakfast. "Mr. Thompson," she said crisply, "what Mr. Morrison and the HOA are doing isn't just harassment, it's racketeering." She opened her briefcase and got to work. "I specialize in cases where local authorities are compromised. Your Chad Morrison is small time compared to what I've handled." For 2 hours, Margaret went through everything. The text messages, the property damage, the bogus police reports, the escalation pattern. But what really lit her up was Grandpa's meticulous documentation of the rotating vehicles. "This is solid evidence of organized harassment. In federal court, it qualifies as conspiracy under RICO statutes." And right on cue, Emily's phone buzzed. A new message. "Direct, blunt, time's up. 24 hours to convince your boyfriend to sell. After that, a broken bar, things get unpleasant." Margaret snapped a photo of the screen. "That's a direct threat. We can get a restraining order immediately." But Grandpa shook his head. "Restraining orders don't stop men like Chad." And the way he said it sent a cold chill down my spine. because I knew whatever came next to broken bar wasn't going to involve paperwork. Men like Chad don't stop because of restraining orders, they just get more careful. Margaret caught the undercurrent she didn't fully understand. Mr. Thompson, exactly what are you planning? Grandpa walked to the window, eyes fixed on the truck parked at our gate. Ms. Sullivan, you handle the legal side. Jake and I will handle the practical side. That dangerous look was back in his eyes. Chad wants to play games with property rights? Fine, let's play. I wanted to stay with Grandpa, but he wasn't having it. Emily's the priority. Jake, Chad's unstable. If this goes wrong, she's the one in real danger. Emily paced the kitchen, nerves crackling through the air. Jake, what's happening out there? I heard trucks rumbling. I told her what we'd seen. Her face went pale. We need to call 911. I shook my head. Emily, they're not coming, not in time. Before I could say more, Chad's voice thundered through a bullhorn. Jake Thompson, get out here. We need to talk. Emily grabbed my arm, panicked. Don't go. It's exactly what he wants. Outside, Chad shouted threats, 6 vehicles growling like predators in the dark. Then came the sound of the excavator starting up. Through the window, we saw its lights moving like the glowing eyes of a metal beast. Chad's voice cracked. What the hell is that, old man? You better not be doing something stupid. Emily and I moved to the front window. What we saw made my jaw drop. Grandpa sat in the excavator's cab, wearing his old army helmet, steering the massive machine toward Chad's actual Ram 2500, parked right at our gate. Chad and his buddies stood around their trucks, clearly shocked. Is that old fool crazy? Chad yelled. He can't do that. But Grandpa stopped 10 feet from the truck and shut off the engine. The silence was deafening. Then his voice rang out, cold and clear, slicing through the night. Chad Morrison, you're trespassing on private property. You have 5 minutes to remove your vehicles and leave. Chad sneered. Old man, this is HOA property. Grandpa pulled out a bundle of official documents. According to county surveys, you're parked on Thompson family property. This vehicle's been abandoned here over 72 hours. Under Texas property code, I'm claiming salvage rights. Chad exploded. That truck hasn't been here 3 days. Grandpa smiled calmly. Jimmy Patterson's truck hasn't. Your truck has been here since Monday morning, 78 hours and counting. He gestured toward our security cameras. Full video documentation available. Chad looked around wildly, realizing he'd been outmaneuvered. Instead of backing down, he pulled out a fake badge. I'm placing you under citizen's arrest. He took a step toward the excavator ray, then headlights flooded the area. Sheriff's Department vehicles roared in A4 patrol cars and Sheriff Johnson's truck, all lights flashing. Everyone freeze, hands where we can see them. Chad stopped dead as officers poured out, weapons drawn. Sheriff Johnson stepped forward with his own bullhorn. Chad Morrison, my son, drop the fake badge and step away. Chad snarled. This maniac's trying to steal my truck. The sheriff laughed harshly. Your truck? That truck is registered to Margaret Morrison Blackwell. She reported it stolen 3 hours ago. I felt Emily's grip tighten in mine as the pieces snapped into place. Chad looked desperate, trapped, and cornered. That's impossible. Margaret gave me permission. Sheriff Johnson nodded at his deputies. She just signed a sworn statement saying she's never given you permission. She's pressing charges: a theft, harassment, fraud. Chad's eyes darted around like a caged animal. This is a setup. The sheriff sighed. Chad, you're under arrest for vehicle theft, harassment, stalking, trespassing, impersonating a police officer, and about a dozen other charges. Chad lost it. He lunged for his truck, probably thinking he could escape, but he forgot about the excavator and Grandpa. What happened next was poetry in motion. As Chad ran, Grandpa fired up the excavator. The massive machine swung into action, its bucket sweeping in a perfect arc. It didn't hit Chad. Grandpa was too precise. Instead, the bucket scooped up the entire front end of the Ram like it was toy. The truck's rear wheels lifted off the ground as Grant praised it 8 feet into the air. Chad stopped, staring at his truck dangling over Sweet Creek. What the hell are you doing? Grandpa's voice was calm. Just helping you understand property rights, son. This truck was abandoned on my property, making it my responsibility to dispose of properly. He maneuvered so the truck hung directly over the deepest part of Sweet Creek. I could haul it to an impound lot for $500 a broken bar or let it swing gently above the water. Sheriff Johnson grinned. Chad, I'd listen to what Mr. Thompson has to say. Chad panicked. You can't do this. That's destruction of property. Grandpa tilted his head thoughtfully. Is it? Technically, the vehicle was abandoned on my property. Under Texas law, I have the right to dispose of abandoned property as I see fit. He nodded. Plus, with all the damages you caused, I figure this truck's value covers what you owe me. Chad's face turned purple with rage. I'll sue you. I'll have your ranch. Sheriff Johnson cut him off. Chad, you're about to be charged with enough felonies to put you away for 10 years. You're not suing anyone. Grandpa glanced at the sheriff. Bob, any legal requirements to preserve stolen property as evidence? Sheriff Johnson pretended to consider. Well, Hal, a broken bar, we've got plenty of evidence. Photos, video, witness statements. One more photo for the case file should be sufficient. Emily and I watched as Grandpa slowly opened the excavator's bucket. The truck tilted forward, teetered a broken bar, then crashed into Sweet Creek with a tremendous splash that echoed through the hills. Chad let out a wail like someone had killed his dog. My truck. You destroyed my truck. Grandpa climbed down with dignity. Your truck? Thought you said it was Margaret's. Chad charged Grandpa, but deputies grabbed him before he took 3 steps. As they handcuffed him, Chad screamed threats and curses, but his words were drowned out by applause, not just from us, but from neighbors emerging from the darkness to watch. Sheriff Johnson walked over to Grandpa. That was beautiful, completely legal, fully justified, and absolutely perfect. 6 months later, Chad Morrison was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Margaret Morrison Blackwell's paid for all damages and a substantial settlement for harassment. She disbanded the HOA security program and became an unexpected friend. Emily passed the bar and started her own practice. Our ranch is peaceful now. We use that spot by the creek for family barbecues, where Emily loves telling visitors about the night Grandpa taught a small-town dictator about gravity and property rights. And every time I hear Sweet Creek flowing, I remember the most valuable lesson Grandpa ever taught me. Never underestimate a 78-year-old farmer with an excavator and 40 years of experience teaching fools about boundaries.